Hey, and welcome everyone to the next Nonprofit Growth Lab. I am really excited for today as I've got Jon and Becky from We Are For Good joining us. I'll introduce them properly in a few minutes. We'll give everyone a couple seconds to stroll on in as we get moving. Now, quick couple of, pre-house announcements here as we get going, specifically for today's roadmap. As a reminder, as everyone always wants to know, yes, this will be recorded and available on demand, specifically on LinkedIn immediately after we shut this one down. For everyone else that's catching up, like I said, on YouTube, Facebook, we're streaming live there, and we'll have it on our website typically within 12 to 24 hours, depending on what our team is capable of doing. We move fast, so it may be quicker than that. As far as today, where we're going, introductions, we're going to get to introducing Jon and Becky specifically from We Are For Good. They're going to give a takeover of Nonprofit Growth Lab, which I'm really excited because I get to kick back and actually take notes this time instead of having to figure out how to manage all the tech and do some good presentations. So this is great. And then finally, we'll save some Q&A at the very back end on what that ends up looking like. Jon and Becky will handle questions as they come in through their presentation and what they have to say. Either we'll flag it, cover it right then and there, or what we'll do is we'll save it to that back end. All right. Last housekeeping thing. Our next Nonprofit Growth Lab is coming up on September 26th at 1 p.m. We've got how to launch a successful year-end digital fundraising campaign. It's a mouthful, but I promise you it's going to be valuable as everyone, if you haven't already, you're clicking into this idea of what does Giving Tuesday look like? What does year-end giving look like? And how do I make the most of your ask, of your supporters and your donors as we figure out how to close this year, which is 2023 is almost at an end, basically, when you come to this point, which is crazy. That's with the year-end dream team, as they like to call that. I personally have been talking with Caitlin for a while now, and I absolutely love every time I get to touch base with her. And that team's ideas around email, not only outreach, but then follow-up, as well as on social media, and how to craft a great strategy heading into the end of this year is going to be phenomenal. They're doing another takeover. So that'll be 1 p.m. September 26th. Okay. Enough of that goodness. Brenna, if you haven't already, if you wouldn't mind dropping the link into the comments to sign up for that. Registration is now open. Okay, let's get moving. So I'm going to bring to stage Becky and Jon from We Are For Good. So let me see if I get this right. Hey,
loving those jams. That is some good music.
That was a good vibe I'm into.
They let me play some good music, so I'm happy here. If you don't know Becky and Jon yet, they have this little thing called We Are For Good. It started out as a podcast. It's grown to now 400 plus episodes, I believe, and they just celebrated the third year of doing their thing, which is phenomenal. And they've quickly, in my opinion, become one of the go-to voices within the nonprofit industry when it comes to everything from fundraising to community to engagement. Like, I go for the goods, right? And their team behind them, supporting them, is so phenomenal. They have their hands in working with so many nonprofits of all sizes. Becky and Jon, welcome.
Adam, you're making us blush. Thank you.
Thank you.
So glad to be with y'all. We're from Oklahoma, so we'll probably say y'all a lot. Sorry, there's going to get some twang in there, but we're delighted to be with you guys today. And we want people to tell us where you're from, dropping your name and your nonprofit. We want to get educated. It might help us guide a little of our convo.
Yeah, such an honor. Thank you.
Perfect. I'm from, I adopted Texas as one of my home places, so y'all comes out a lot. So
you get it.
We're in a safe space here.
Is the question,
That's it.
Well, perfect. Well, what Becky and Jon have in store for us is really the habits of an effective fundraiser. There's a lot that goes into that, and I won't take your thunder, but in your words, what is the purpose? What is the reason that people would want to pay attention to what we're about to talk to?
Yeah, I mean, so we're always encouraging people to really zoom out. And so we won't share our full story today, but Becky and I met in doing nonprofit work. I was her intern at the OSU Foundation here in Oklahoma. And so I think it's easy to jump into tactics. And that's where especially as year end is coming and you're thinking of all the things to do, we hope this presentation is going to help you kind of reframe. There are a lot of tactics to do, but there are some habits that when you unleash them, they're going to stack and they're going to build, and you're going to get so much more out of whatever you're building or whatever movement you're pouring into. And so really excited. This conversation also is from 11 different conversations that we ask people, what are the most impactful habits at some of the most successful major gift officers and executive directors and things like that. So this is standing on the shoulder of giants. It's not just our words. This is the words of the community that's surrounded We Are for Good. So excited to share.
Wow, great summation, John.
Yeah, let's just go.
I'm glad
Let's
you
just
snatched
wrap.
me.
I think it's good. Any questions?
Cool. Okay. I'm not going to shut it down right there. You're going to have to actually work for and back that up. I am going to actually jump off screen, go on mute, get my notepad ready. Jon and Becky, take it away. And I'm excited to see what you got cooking for us.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro,
Sounds
Adam.
good. Keep sharing where you're from. I love seeing the LA, New York. Man, you've spanned the coast, Colleen. It's really good to see you.
I know, we're on each side. Yeah, so I could tell you as John's pulling this up, we are going to go into some new mindsets here because we're talking to really progressive organizations. And there seems like there's kind of this line in the sand right now where it's everything is BC or AC. Is anyone feeling that? Before COVID and after COVID.
True, yeah.
And so what these habits are going to do is really help not only elevate the game that you're going to bring to your nonprofit, but we hope it elevates you too. So, all right, we ready to roll, Jon?
All right. I've got the deck loaded. Good United team. If you can pull it up, we can show some slides here. Hey, Tilly. Welcome. Hey, we know you, Tilly.
It's good to see you.
All right.
Okay,
we got the slides coming in.
I think Brenna's going to help us.
Okay, so I was going to say, I was about to start describing. I was going to say, everybody.
This is a vibe for us.
So since the slide came up, I won't make you do this, but I was going to be like, close your eyes and imagine an iceberg. We pull up this image a ton because I do think it's really relevant if you think about, especially life inside the nonprofit. If you're anything like us, Becky, we started in marketing. We call ourselves marketers disguised as fundraisers to this day, but we both kind of had parallel paths together. So I stayed in the annual giving lane. Becky was in the major gifts lane in the kind of end part of her career. And here's the thing. It's easy to look across and you see the different organizations represented here in the chat today and be like, oh my gosh, I wish that we could do whatever, organization has accomplished. And we probably could plug in Charity Water, right? Most people are like, what is Charity Water doing? We need to just emulate that. But what we found, especially through the lens of having a podcast, is that it's not just what visible is. It's not just what's visible is what really matters. What's underneath? What are the habits that really have sustained and supported and created this thing that's probably visible? And it's probably a lot of unglamorous stuff, if we're really honest. It's a lot of showing up consistently and kind of aligned with the North Star. And so we want to talk about those things today that are going to build this iceberg that's not just the visible, it's deep. It's got a lot of tentacles coming from it that makes it really a strong movement. And so that's really kind of some tone setting for this conversation and why we want to focus on habits. And Becky, feel free to hop in here because I start to get on my soapbox because there is just so much power. And we built We Are for Good around a set of values. And there are values that we saw in our own work. So it wasn't like we started with this playbook. We were watching how did OSU, gather $1 billion campaign? How do we start a grassroots employee giving campaign at a hospital that really didn't have a big donor base? It came back to some core values of what's true for philanthropy. And one of those is playing the long game. And I think if you really are dialed in that playing the long game is development at its core, you're building relationships that aren't just about the highest dollar amount. It's building relationships at scale, which is what Good United does so well, is how do you activate people? How do you find signals and triggers all across your ecosystem? And in the same way, playing the long game is all about habits. What habits do you have today? Luckily, we all started brushing our teeth twice a day a long time ago, right? Because we get to reap the benefits of that today. Or if you haven't, this is a good PSA. Go start doing that. It'd be really great for you.
You're not sponsored by the American Dental Association, but
yes, we should talk to them. That'd be amazing. So why habits? It's we really believe these are unlocks for your organization. And we're going to talk through some of them. Some of them are going to be probably surprising to you. Some of them may be expected. But again, think of it in the term of the long game. What happens as you do this over a period of time as they stack and build and grow?
And I'll also just add some context in here that you may be someone who's in donor relations, or you could be a digital marketer, or you might be just the one-man shop and you're doing all the things. I want to say one-woman shop because our sector is 75% women. But it's there are tenets that we can take from all of these. So I hope it's really helpful to you. But at the onset, hi, we're Becky and Jon. It's so lovely to meet you if we haven't met you yet. But yeah, we spent almost 20 years inside healthcare and higher ed, philanthropy and foundations, and really looking at it through a different lens of not just marketing, but community, content. What can media do? What are the possibilities that could be unlocked if we just think differently? We launched our podcast a little over 3 years ago, and we have a big community that we'd love for you to come and join. It's free. We want a no holds barred, no payment for entry to come in because we want people to get unstuck, and we believe community is the way. So come subscribe. We would love for you to come and check out any of our episodes. They're all free. We want content and learning to be constant, and we want education to be accessible for everybody.
So definitely check it out. Probably about a year ago, we pencil out different series on the podcast. And let's be honest, we always want to stack the deck with the things that we're most curious about too. And we were really interested in this idea of like, what would it look like if you started to ask some of the most successful, disruptive people in our field or that coach people in our field about what are the habits that really matter? What are the questions that you need to be asking that would really move the needle? And so we started this 11-part series that built out to be 11 parts where we found different people in different lanes, from major gift officer to board member to events person to annual giving officer. And we structured the conversations in the same sort of way so we could start to understand what are the KPIs that matter? What are the questions that we need to be asking in this role? And what are the daily habits? What's the most powerful habit that you can implement? And so now we're re-releasing this. We haven't actually shared this, I think maybe like once other time public. This is now available. If you search in the podcast app, whichever one you use, Spotify or Apple or whatever else on the Android platform, sorry, not very versed on that. Look this up, and it's an 11-part series. So if you want to go deeper with what we're talking today, this is completely free. You can find the role for your organization. So looking at you, executive directors, you could send probably an episode to each person on your team that's really tailored to what would be really impactful for that role, from operations to frontline fundraisers. So I feel like this is an infomercial, but I hope this is really valuable.
Yeah, let's get into it. We're ready to get into the meat here. Okay, y'all know this. Development is a team sport. And like I kind of teased early on, even if this isn't your lane, understanding the collective is going to help us move through our work with greater intention. And we're going to be able to just drift off of each other in a way that we've never been able to before. So let's click to the next slide, because we got to get into the meat of this. Jon, you're the growth mindset king. You got to take this.
Well, okay. Growth mindset probably sounds like heady, but I think this is so important. And Becky and I, with 450 episodes, we just recorded 3 more today. Or was it 4 more today? It's fascinating to me that you talk to people that are founders, or you talk to people that have been really successful gift officers, raising hundreds of millions of dollars. All conversations come back to they didn't know what they were doing when they got started, but they had a posture of like, I'm here to grow. I'm here to actually not just like have things happen, but interpret them and learn and figure things out. And so while, cultivating a growth mindset is going to be core to whatever role that you are in the organization, here's some things that we've found that are really powerful to unlock this in your own life. And one is just the idea of staying curious. And it's a good place to be in life in general. But when you're curious, you don't have all the answers, but you're excited to like learn and figure things out. Second is to keep your eyes focused forward. So a lot of our discussion today too is about understanding and knowing your North Star. Because if you start to build habits, you do want to know where you're going, because that's going to keep you pointed. And as they stack and grow over time, you're going to make sure you're going to end up in the place that you want to end up with. So having really clear goals and dialed into that is really important. And then trying, and this is so hard, especially for me, so I'm going to pick on myself, focus on the process and not just the results. Cultivating this idea that it's not always just about the results, but getting out there, especially in fundraising, when there's a lot of no's, there's a lot of closed doors. It's this habit, it's this muscle that we flex of just keep pushing through and be excited and dialed into that the process is part of the work. And then creating time to learn. Okay, you're doing this right now. So like credit for you for number 4, or if you're listening to podcasts, or how else are you getting information? Maybe going to conferences or meetups. It's the power of community. And you're going to see community threaded into so much that we talk about and teach, because we don't only just believe it for like our own selves, having your band of people who are the people that you can lean on, especially when things are difficult, but also to just have this community posturing that it's easier to learn in community. It's easier to talk through things and come up with ideas. So those are just some ideas as you start to cultivate a growth mindset. And then if this is too much, here's a quote for you to remember. Everything is figure outable. Marie Forleo wrote an entire book about this, but there's the thesis. Have a belief. Have just a simple belief that I can figure this out. You're not too old. You're not too outdated. I don't care if you're not on TikTok yet. Like I'm not either. So like everything is figure outable. If you have that posture, like this whole process is going to be so much more fun and rewarding too. Can I use that in Scrabble?
Totally do.
In the dictionary?
I'm like, I don't know if that's made the Urban Dictionary yet, but we might be able to submit it. But the bottom line is that habits are going to be way more powerful than just your goals. I think as a sector, we've just kind of held on with a death grip to those KPIs as being the end all be all. but it's actually the things that we can routinely automate, things that become habitual, that help us move so much more quickly through this work. And if you do it in community, kind of like Jon is talking about, the possibilities are endless because we're always iterating, we're iterating together. Do y'all know Octavia Butler? She is this brilliant science fiction writer, and she has this fabulous quote: first, forget inspiration, because habit is more dependable. Habit is going to sustain you whether you're inspired or not. And it's this practice of persistence. And so showing up consistently, whether that's with your content, whether it's stewarding, whether it's making sure that your board is communicated with, having cadence and rhythm in your work is going to, one, not only help your work thrive so much more, but as a human being, we got a lot on our plate. We're nonprofit practitioners, which means we're working on the margins with a little bit, and we got a lot on our plate. So help ourselves by getting into these habits. And the best way to do that, y'all, is to play the long game. And so persistence is totally a long game key. And this is our core value number 2 of our company. And so what we're saying is the investments you make right now, whether it's in yourself, whether it's in the habits you make, whether it's in the changes that you put into your mission that sort of embrace this brave new world of after COVID, we want you to step into it and know that all of that is currency that is going to be played out in the long run. And so got a great quote here from Adam Riley, who's with the FarmLink Project. If you guys not checked out FarmLink Project, it is one of the most progressive Gen Z-led nonprofits that exploded out of COVID. And one of their founders said, the biggest impact we're going to have is with what people who come through FarmLink are going to do after it. So they don't ever think about their Gen Z or their donor coming in the moment. What can I do to serve them today? They think about, how do I keep them here? How do I use them as a brand ambassador? How do I get them to help fuel the movement? That is a pure long game play. So let's talk about what we're going to expect here. And then I'm going to let Jon take on the first one. We're going to go through 5 principles that impactful fundraisers are going to master in the work. And we're going to break those down very quickly. We're going to give you some expert-led habits. We're going to lift up the best of the best from those episodes. And then we're going to give you playlists and convos to go deeper, because we know this is just a conversation, but there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of depth and data. You all have nuance in your missions. And so we know that it's going to inspire a bigger conversation. You're starting it here today. And we're really proud of you for doing it, because prioritizing self-growth is our number 1 trend for the year. And learning is got to be constant, because the world is shifting around us more quickly than we can adjust, it feels like. So Jon, what do we got? Number 1.
I feel like that was some serious tone setting, y'all. So, hey, one thing I'd love to see in the chat is throw in there, what is your job title or job description? Like, tell us what area you're focused on, because we'll try to tailor some of this content as we see some of y'all filter in here. But here's the first one. And we have 5 of these that we're going to lift. Impactful fundraisers ask bigger questions. And this was kind of a little bit inspired by Tony Robbins. I don't know if you're a big Tony Robbins fan, but if you want to get like hyped up and find your own personal power, is like the quality of our life is connected to the quality of questions we ask ourselves. And the same is true with basically everything in life. You know, I kind of led into with this when Adam was asking for some of the, spoiler alerts for this. But if you start immediately with tactics, okay, we need a giving club or something, you're not going to have the same response as if you start with what is the aligned North Star? What is the vision that you're really trying to get? Maybe the giving club is a really great angle, but maybe it really isn't. It's going to take your focus off. So, really impactful fundraisers start with bigger questions of what are they really solving for? And they know, and they're dialed into that North Star, and that's going to drive their key objectives. So one of the things I'd say is you're leading into like year end. It's an easy time to get dragged into all the tactics. What are you really trying to move the needle? Is it volunteer recruitment? Is it money in the door? What is it? Like, I would love to hear that. And I'm seeing stewardship, Tilly, representing. We've got development managers, development associates. So we really do have a gamut of like, everyone on this call today isn't just about raising money. They're also about, creating experience for donors and maybe recruiting people into the fold and just keeping the back of house in order too. So as you know your role, and we'll drop the full playlist, or if you didn't catch the podcast that you could download, know the KPIs that really matter. And this is going to be specific for your own role and specific for your own goals. So we can't really give that to you here, but know what really matters. Like, spend time investigating and digging into that question. What is a KPI that I can pay attention to? And what are the ones, probably the most important, what can I let go of? Is the follower count really matter? or is it the engagement that matters? And it's going to be different for different organizations. But impactful fundraisers are really intentional with goal setting to make sure that all of that locks up together. This is going to give you so much clarity, not only in just like how you show up on a daily basis, but how it connects, and which is going to keep you motivated as you do all of the things that are going to kind of follow. So know your North Star. I think I've said this a few different times, but one of our favorite folks that talks about this is Brooke Ritchie Babbage. If you don't follow her, like add her to your queue. She has the Nonprofit Mastermind podcast,
Brilliant.
also a really brilliant resource, especially for executive directors. If you're on the call today, she has got frameworks and playbooks, but she spends a lot of time coaching executive directors. And this is what she says: specificity and clarity. Did my microphone go out, or did it just?
It did, but you're still there. I can hear you now.
Okay. Specificity and clarity give rise to intentionality, and sustainability comes from intentionality. I mean, this is goals, but we're all aiming for sustainability just in taking care of our own self in this journey and this work too. And it becomes a lot less of a burden if you're dialed into what do I really need to focus on and what can I let go of? So ask bigger questions is number one. Here's some pro tips. If you're just getting started, know your data. Do you know the data points? And as you kind of connect these to the KPIs that matter, do you know who your customer and your donor are? And I'm sure Good United's probably talks about this all the time, because audience is like everything, like understanding who are your actual people, where do they gather, what do they care about, what are the values that connect them. Understanding your donor and customer is going to allow you to be so much more connected to that too. And then this is a practice that we use on the podcast all the time, employing the idea of cognitive diversity. Realizing that you have your own mindsets, you have your own beliefs and systems in which you see the world, that we need other ways, other people and voices speaking into that. You can really even cultivate your own personal board of directors in a sense of like, who do you follow online? Who are the people that you connect with and ask their feedback on? Getting some different diversity of thought is going to allow you to see different pathways and not be so locked in. Again, growth mindset. And then just embracing mindfulness, reflective thinking, actually carving out time, which I think is probably the most important thing, carving out time to do this. And so you can do that by simply blocking your schedule, or, maybe creating a daily habit where it's like, okay, at the end of the day, I am really clear about what are these questions that I'm answering for myself.
Okay, so I'm going to take over number 2, and John's going to work on his volume really quickly. So, but I want to talk about mastering the mindsets. We've gone a little bit into mindsets, and it is just something I will tell you, I thought it was a little woo-woo. Can I explain? Like, I thought John, when he would talk to me about mindsets, it was something very heady, something that entrepreneurs did. But really, when you get into the mindsets, and I can go to the next slide, growth abundance, growth mindset. The fact that you can think about how you learn and grow, having an abundance mindset, believing that there is enough for you, believing there is enough for people around you, maybe having a bravery mindset. And man, is this the moment to employ the bravery mindset? The fact that you can do hard things, you can do new things, we can take risks in our work and do things that are very innovative. And so this is a time for that. And guess what? When you have growth, abundance, bravery, empathy mindset, my favorite one, still be human in our work. We still want to know that our missions have a soul, that they have feelings, that they have people, and our beneficiaries have impact to the way that we treat them. The way that we storytell has to be dignified. That's why we do ethical storytelling. But if you employ all of this, the beauty of those mindsets is that is something that's going out into the world that is like a magnet. And people who believe that they can learn and grow, in growth mindset, or they believe in abundance, are going to start finding that within your work. And I think one of the great masters of this is Julie Ordonez. If you're in Major Gifts, and I saw in the chat, that Dara, I see that you're in Major Gifts, please go follow her. She has an incredible podcast called the Courage Lab? Sorry, everybody's is coming together for me. We got a lot of podcasts in our network. It's fantastic. But she really talks about how do you get, to the point where you feel courageous as a gift officer. And she says the antithesis of overwhelm is focus. And so if you can harness that habit again of focus and employing these mindsets, then the world truly is going to be your oyster. She has this great quote on the next slide. It says, confidence in your fundraising results comes from doing something, even when it's uncomfortable, or if it's painful, or you're tired, or you're afraid. And I'll tell you, as a recovering gift officer, I got a lot of moxie and I got a lot of fearlessness in me. It does not matter. Something happens to your nervous system when you're about to go put $1 million proposal in front of someone, even if it's your favorite donor. And getting the repetition of that bravery mindset going is going to start to build that muscle and that strength. So let's go through a couple of pro tips to sort of master the master of the master mindsets. And I think the first step is really ensuring that your actions align with your values. Jon talked about this a little bit in the We Are for Good story. And I want to ask you about that. What are your values? What are the values that are tethered right now to your mission? And I'm not talking about what's your mission statement, what's your vision statement. I'm talking about what are the things that you believe and they are inherent to who you are, and how, and the way that they show up is something that you call out. I could tell you the first core value of We Are for Good is everyone matters. So that means when anybody comes into our community, we really work to make them feel seen, heard, valued, known. And that shows up in our stewardship, that shows up in the way that we onboard people. And so think about your values. And if you don't have those, start brainstorming the words that make your mission unique. So the second one is speaking up, living your vulnerability. And we put in there specifically, we're looking at you leaders because we need you to model vulnerable courage. And so this means maybe lifting an idea. It means talking about if you see harm in your organization, or if you see opportunity, or if you're trying to include someone. We need to, again, have that cognitive diversity where other thoughts and ideas are coming in. And guess what? That is also going to be a muscle to you to maybe speak out and talk about the things you're seeing in your unique position, how it's helping, how it's hurting, how it's amplifying the work that you do. And then the third thing is you're here doing it, y'all. Pat on the back. Invest in learning, like whatever that looks like. I think it's just such a great time in our sector because the democratization of information is so fantastic. And you can find free resources all the time. Like I commend Good United for holding this webinar and holding space to have these conversations because they elevate all of us. And then just remember that bravery is better empowered in community. Find your hype squad. Find somebody who's been there with you, because on the good days, you can celebrate together. And on the hard days, when you need some support, you need a resource, you need a tool, you need just a friendly pat on the back, you've got a hype squad of people who can support you in it.
So good. Okay. If you hang around us very long, and is my audio a little better now?
It's yes, definitely better. Thank you, my friend.
AirPods save the day. Okay. If you hang around us long, you're not going to be surprised that we're going to talk about storytelling, but impactful fundraisers know the power of storytelling and they unleash it. And so we wanted to create space to just talk about this. And it begins with like finding the authentic storyteller within. We've developed a full course around this. And Tilly, it's so fun to see you here because she was part of our storytelling.
I know. Hi, Tilly.
But like it starts from a belief that you can be a storyteller. And I think if you keep kind of getting this cadence of this conversation, is like you have this within you, and maybe you need to like work on developing it or figure out what's going to be the best way for you to connect with people. But we all have the ability to do this. We all have stories in our life that can point to probably the missions we're connected to. But even if not, then you can find ways to storytell that are going to connect people to, who's being impacted by your mission. What is the board member story? What is your staff story? What is the volunteer story? There's so many stories, and knowing how to activate and use those is really a superpower. And one of the most empowering ways to do this is just be intentional and connect to your rabid fans. And right now, I wish there was a button in all of our CRMs that it's like, who's my rabid fans? But we do
I want to manifest that. Yeah.
Right. We do a mashup of this. There's probably some attribute or something. There's a mashup of knowing your data and knowing your gut. And we talk about this a lot because, yes, you could pull a list of who gave when and when's their anniversary date and all these sorts of things. But also, like, who are those people that you would really call like believers in your mission? They're people that just believe at a different level. They're not transactional donors. They're giving because of some really connected reason or story or purpose or family member. Those are people that have stories that really could be connective for your mission. And so starting there, understanding, knowing your rabid fans and using their stories to power whatever campaign you're working on is a really great place to start. And we can empower people around us. We talk a lot about it as inbound and outbound channels to do that. And just setting up really simple ways for people to share your story. And as you model sharing stories, just adding a tag of like, hey, why did you make this give today on your giving form, can be a really simple way that you're anecdotally going to start collecting these stories. We at our healthcare foundation just started publishing what people would write in with their permission, of course. Like, here's a little quip of a story of why Becky gave. And the more you flex that, the more you put it out there, it's so fascinating because people feel almost like the permission they needed to share their story. And really creating that culture of storytelling is what you want at your organization. And impactful fundraisers definitely do that because it's always a drumbeat. We know storytelling is just like the heartbeat of connection. And I have a quote coming up that really makes that case really solidly. But you're also going to look for ways to syndicate. And syndicate, just really quickly, is not just like Where is Friends, is on HBO Max, is on Netflix, like it's a little bit of that. But picture this idea is whatever you create, whatever story that you're dialed in, it's a really beautiful story, make sure you don't just tell it once and put it in one 12th page of the impact report and ship it and done. Find ways to peel apart pieces of that story and syndicate it. Can you use the photo? Can you pull a quote? Can you pull a stat from it? Can you put it in different places in different channels and just test things too? Looking at you like digital marketers, this is like a playground of how can you syndicate content. Don't go recreate the wheel, but just recreate the way you distribute it and package it. And you'll spend more of your time actually getting engagement and less of your time creating content. That's like something we could really get wound up about, but I'll move on for now. Mike Dirksen, we just keep featuring different podcasters. So if you're not following these folks, I'm telling you, so many good nuggets. Mike Dirksen has the Build Good podcast that I'd totally recommend you pouring into, especially annual giving leaning folks. But his comment here, the way the human brain can start to relate better to a point of view is told through story. It hasn't changed in forever. And so we should always be a student of that game. And, I think he's making just the contextual point that it's like story is how all of history was passed down. So like that, the storytelling arc is just something that the more you understand how to thread it, how to use it, when to use it, it's only going to serve you really well. So being a student of that game is something that is a superpower. Some pro tips, how can you get started right away? I don't know how many of y'all use Slack. We've opened up a Slack channel among our We Are for Good team because, people will be sharing or telling a tidbit of what they learned from a podcast, or maybe they're sharing on social media somewhere. We just started screenshotting that stuff and replying. Let's be clear. Make sure you're replying, first of all.
That's
and saying
engagement.
thank you and engaging the conversation. Yeah, stoke that comment. But screenshot it and just put it in a folder because this is going to give you so many more hooks to come back to. And it's going to give you that kind of inbound kind of channel of storytelling that you're going to always have inspiration. And honestly, it's a big boost for the team too. And you can collect user donor generated content, kind of what I shared on your giving form or wherever is a point of transaction. Why not ask in that moment? Whether they're signing up to be a volunteer or submitting their volunteer application, are you asking some of those softer questions of getting to know people's stories? Just having this posture of curiosity and asking questions is going to begin to build this culture of storytelling. And then this is just a hack. Anywhere you go, share a story, because that is going to make that connection so much more powerful. It's why we thread it into every one of our podcast episodes, because I oftentimes won't remember the things that they said, but man, I remember the way I felt when they shared that story. And it's usually a one of connection, of empathy, of trust, and all of that. Question on Slack versus Teams. I don't know that I'm the best to answer that. We use Slack, we've used Teams. I'm more of an Apple guy, so I don't love the Microsoft stuff, but why am I saying this out loud?
You are. John is Mr. Steve Jobs. I'll tell you, Dara, and I'm sorry, Dara. I have a friend named Dara, so I'm going to go with Dara. Dara, we use Slack just because it integrates so well and has so many incredible extensions in it. And so it just works a little bit more smoothly for us. But I'm sure if you all are on a Microsoft platform and it makes sense for you, the bottom line is we're just glad that you're all talking in community. Slack kind of keeps the email. I call it like the scrolling doom, like where your email just stacks up. It keeps you from doing that. It's very, very quick, and really encourage anyone to check it out if it's really a fast way to do like sort of inner office communication. So, Kevin. Oh, hi, Kevin Kramer. Good to see you. I know.
What's up, buddy?
I'm glad that he's here. Okay, so let's move into our number 4. And if you hear me say nothing, I want you to hear this, friend. Impactful fundraisers take care of themselves. And mental health is not something, balance, taking care of just being restful. These are not things that we have really valued as a sector. And we think that we need to start having bigger conversations around this. And so what this means is we want to take care of you, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. And we want to be able to have you feeling like you are here. You are passionate about this work. You are not burnt out. You are not experiencing compassion fatigue from all of the duties that are upon you. So some ways that you can put this into practice is communicate clearly with humility and vulnerability what's going on with you. I can tell you that I had a complete and total nervous breakdown and while I was in my last job at our healthcare organization. I did not know the signs. I did not know what was coming until it was upon me. And I couldn't believe that I didn't know anybody that had also had an experience like that. And so I started talking about it. We shared my entire nervous breakdown on our first mental health week episode. And it's like, once I shared that, oh my gosh, my inbox exploded with people whispering, that's my story too. And we're saying, don't just whisper it, talk about it, talk about your struggles, talk about an inability to keep up, talk about low morale, because leaders need to know how to help empower you to get onto the front line. We've got to normalize rest. How many of us have run our gala? We're from Oklahoma. We call it gala, not gala. How many of you have done, an entire Saturday night gala and come back on Monday morning and dove right back into all the tactics? We need some time to normalize.
It's all the hands raised.
Yes, all the hands virtually raised, because we've all been there. And it's like, we need to talk about the value in rest and giving people an afternoon off, giving them a break when they need to go to therapy, saying, hey, your kid's in the spelling bee, you know what? Take that time, because you're pouring in at times we don't see here. And we also have to think about, how do we separate from the job, because we're a lot of Enneagram 2. For anybody that loves the Enneagram, nonprofit is full of the 2s. We want to do good work. We want to care deeply, and we take all this on. And it's really about, hey, we've got to take care of ourselves and turn it off when we go home. We've got to put our phone away, quit looking at your email, allow your brain some space to recharge on the things that give you joy. We also want you to start flipping the script on overhead myth. And if for anyone who is new to this, do not Google it, because, well, you can Google overhead myth, but the overhead myth is really this idea that we should be working from the margins, and that we need to have as low of cost per dollar raised, because we want to make sure that the bulk of that gift is going directly to the front line, to impact. But the reality is, y'all, we are overhead. Humans are overhead. Having the lights on is overhead. Our benefits are overhead, and we are worthy of being paid well. We are worthy of having rest, of having resources. And so educating our board, educating our teams about why it's important to invest in the front line of what's happening is going to really help do a lot of things. Not only is it going to give you rest, it's going to help you have some bandwidth for innovation, to try stuff, to feel like you can make a big move to something that you've never done before. And at the bottom line, we just need to practice this idea that everyone matters, that we don't know what's going on when people go home at night. And we need to have this active compassion in the way that we work through this work, because it's difficult and it's heavy, and we need each other in it to take care of ourselves. We absolutely love Matthew Helmer. I'm not sure if you're aware of him. Please go find him on LinkedIn. But he's part of the donor relations group, which is just a fabulous group of forward-thinking donor relations professionals. He came out and talked about the habits of an impactful event fundraiser, but he gave this great David White quote, and it's: the antidote to exhaustion is not necessarily rest. The answer to exhaustion is wholeheartedness, which has a total Brene Brown feel for me. But it's really about getting back to our joy and refilling our cups with the things that really drive us. So take care of yourself, and know that I'm giving you a virtual mom hug here from me to you if you're needing that today.
Yeah. And once I can toggle between screens, I'll drop the link to the overhead myth discussion. We broke
I'll
it
find
down
it.
for an entire episode, because you'll get like some talking points of just like, how do you even bring this up and talk about it, which I think is really helpful too.
And
So
I'm
the
sorry,
last
I'm going
ones
to
we
drop
kind of,
a little plug there. For any of you who
Yeah.
know Dan Pilata, very, very famous TED Talk, talking about the overhead myth and compensation. He has a documentary film coming out this month called Uncharitable. So if you want a little field trip for your board, that is a great way to attack the overhead myth. Sorry, John. And we're going to have Dan on the podcast.
No, it's good.
deeper.
Yeah, Dan's coming back. So the last one that we would round out with is impactful fundraisers both build and tap community. And community is not a buzzword for us. Like, it's something we talk about because we just see the power of it, and fundraisers know how this really unlocks for them. And so why does it matter? We're made for connection. So, I mean, there's the one piece of it that we need to find people to be in this journey with. If you don't know people, like, come to the We Are for Good community, plug into, the Good United resources, and you're going to start meeting people as you show up and kind of lean in. But why else does this matter is the community around your work is one of shared values. And I think in like a really noisy world that we live in right now, where attention is the scarcity, no longer information is the scarcity, like, people that engage with our missions are value aligned. And when they're showing signals of interest, this is why dollar amount doesn't matter as much as engagement and the way that they're showing up to plug in. That means something. And if you're really coming at this from an angle of we're building a community around our work, then that will matter to you and just how you build your KPIs and how you build your goals. And I alluded to this earlier, but when you're personally just saying, how do I surround myself in community? Build your own personal board of directors. Like, don't wait to get into that room. Build the room yourself. And we lean to the loving podcast, but it's a great way to get the people that you want to spend time, that get you jazzed up, that get you aligned and feeling most alive. Like, put those people in your earbuds, because that's going to help you kind of bridge this gap. But if you can do it in person, that's so much better. Like, who in your community can you get breakfast with, or who can you grab coffee with, and build what Brooke Ritchie Ravitch calls a sustainable sisterhood, which we love that. And then raise your hand when you're stuck. Like, community is going to be the answer for figuring out things. That's why I love that Adam and team have brought these kind of sessions together, because we each need each other and different ideas of what's working and when people get unstuck. And then you get to be plugging into this by cheering people on. A lot of our principles are very kindergarten, and we recognize that, but we think there's a lot of power in
There's
what
some
happened in
basis in
kindergarten.
that. Yes.
So one of our favorite questions from this series that we linked up to, and we'll link it again as we start to close out, but in the habit series, we said, what relationships do you prioritize? Hey, annual giving officer. Hey, major gift officer. And these questions like so surprised us. And Brooke was coming at this question from the angle of an executive director. And we thought she was going to say your top donors, your board chair. She was talking about like who's going to help you basically get through, who's going to keep you aligned with your why, with your North Star, and who's going to help you be sustained in this journey. And those other relationships start to shake out with that. But really, figuring out your personal community is imperative to like staying in this work and being sustainable as gift officers. So let's throw some pro tips at you. If you're building, or how do you tap community? Creating this safe space. Like, we already mentioned this, but where can like valued people come around your mission? Maybe it is on social media, maybe it's in a private community, or maybe it's in a monthly Zoom, whatever it is that you're hosting. We see all different levels of organizations creating community around their giving programs, around maybe their monthly giving club. Look at the model of Charity Water doing that with the spring, but we see organizations doing that in smaller groups as well. Giving accessibility, making it inclusive. It's no longer, were you invited into this room? No, it's like you are part of this room as being a supporter of this mission. And what that unlocks is that people that maybe don't have the financial resources, but they have other resources that can be pointed in your direction, all of a sudden come to bear because you created that space. And then they give people the gift of activation. This is something we love to talk about, is like, are you actually mobilizing your rabid fans? Those believers, the people that you know are the ones that come and show up and they want to help set up the chairs and take down the chairs. All those people, are you giving them a clear call to action? We just like tested this out in our own community too, by saying, hey, we're going to launch listener support. We're giving people a way, if you love the podcast content, to directly like step in and take action and help us fund and fuel the free content. But think about what that is for you. Are you really activating people with that clarity? And then if you want to take it to the next level, this is coming from your graphic designer friend over here, consider branding that community. People want to be part of something. I see our friend Evan in here. Evan, the nonprofiteer, that is like his brand. It's like, if you're in the nonprofit space, nonprofiteer, like it's like a rally cry of like, hey, we're in this together. But putting a brand behind it, it just gives you something to lock into, to speak about, and to speak about with one voice whenever you're out in the community talking. Okay, So I feel like we've teased this, and here's our activation for you. If you need community, like we believe in this too, we've put together this free community. You can join us at weareforgoodcommunity.com. You can meet friends. These are actually real people. We just screenshotted people that hang out in this community. You can meet people. There's meetups. There's interesting discussions happening around lots of different topics.
Free
And it's all over at
resources.
weareforgoodcommunity.com.
Yes.
Yeah.
Come find us. We want to hang with you. And if you're really interested in the habits of an impactful fundraiser, you want to go deeper into this, please click on this QR code, or you can just go to weareforgood.com/habits. And look, I mean, we'll click to the next slide. If you see your position there, one that works for it, come and check it out. And I want to give another little plug for number 4, digital fundraiser. Adam just preempted an incredible conversation that's coming up next with Caitlin Bond and Bryn Crespin and Caroline Fothergill Griffin. And Caroline is our digital fundraiser who walked through these evolved habits. I really encourage you to attend that, because those 3 ladies know what's up to get a digital year-end strategy going. So dive in and just know you're going to get some content that has a very consistent feel. It's going to be about asking the right questions. We're going to talk about what are the 3 habits or actions for success in this role? What are the relationships you prioritize? What are some of the do this, not that experiences, KPIs that matter? And then we're always going to talk about how to find sustainability and support, because we want to take care of you. We want you to stay in this work. The world needs your work. We know how much you need this work intrinsically, and we want to make it a symbiotic, healthy experience. So we would love to answer any questions if any of you all have them, but we really appreciate that you all came today. And good on you for pouring into yourself. Proud of you for that. Adam, you want to come back up and hang with us? Yeah.
Where's Adam's? Can we get Adam's
hype music to come back? Vibe music back.
It's like, geez, I'm over here like fighting back some tears of from just I feel so taken care of after this. Thank you both. This is phenomenal, and more than I think what our team was hoping to get out of this, and then some. So Jon and Becky, as always, like y'all did not disappoint. I'll keep an eye on the Q&A if anyone has any questions. We've got 14 minutes to spend here with y'all. And real quick, too, I'm going to share my screen only to give us a look at that. We are For Good Community. If you haven't done it, I'm going to accept cookies so you guys can hit me with retargeting ads, baby.
Oh my gosh, we give you cookies. We give you cookies upon showing up.
But y'all, I'm going to be joining this right after this, only because I get stuck in the trees of what I do on a day-to-day basis. I don't get to do the fundraising anymore, as my part-time gig for that last couple of years is now done. I'm focusing solely on Good United. So I like to get into the goodness here. It helps me to clear my brain. And I'm always looking to figure out how in the world do I talk better to my fundraising peers about what we do, but also in general, like what are the pain points? Yesterday, we had a lot of people show up for a talk and a panel on what's going on with the decline of individual donors. And it was really interesting to hear some really great points from Katrina and Otis from Turnkey, Nathan from the author of Generosity Crisis, and Jill coming in from who's I believe the CMO from PanCan, just stepped into that role. So
interesting.
There's some really cool stuff going on that I just love listening, taking notes. That's another one I get to sit back and take notes. This is so great. But conversations like that, and then similar to what y'all just covered, I'm assuming that's happening in this community, right?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you something really interesting that's happened organically within this community is people just come and ask for what they want, and then they gather together. We have several subcommittees that have or subcommunities that have popped up as a result of that. We have international development. We've got Tech for Good. We've got evolved change agents, people who want to take leadership to the next level and actually talk about how to actually start using it to change the world. I can't remember all of them. I think we have 7 or 8, but it's like, just find your people. Again, we keep saying community is everything. And when you get stuck, if you need a resource, if you don't know how to write a job description, if you're looking for some tech, it's like there are a lot of people within this community, thousands, who can support you, and they want to be there for you.
Yeah.
That's perfect. And we do have a question coming in from LinkedIn. If you do you mind if I pop that up real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Look at me knowing how to use this.
Look at you multitasking.
Can you talk about specific day-to-day habits that help move things forward? And that's from, I'm going to adopt yours, Becky, Dara. I'll go Becky first and then Jon second.
I'm going to go Jon first because he is Mr. Habit, and then I'll take the end if you don't mind.
Go for it. Go for it.
Well, I'd say, I mean, we talked about getting really clear on what your goal is. And I think it's hard to say what is that specific daily habit, but this getting intentional is where it's at. You know, like getting intentional to know what is my North Star? What is really the metrics that matter? And I'll lift like the major gift conversation because I think it's really specific with that. You've got a $7 million goal at the beginning of the year. It feels completely insane of how are you going to do that? But start to back it into like manageable chunks. Does that mean you need to be asking for $14 million? That means I need to be putting a $1 million proposal out at least once a month. That means I need to have at least 7 meetings to do that. Like try to get it into the most manageable place that you can get, which I love that I chose 7 million as the manageable option here. But Julie Ordonez talked about this really beautifully because if your goal ultimately is, I need to really call like 10 people a day so I can get the bookings that I need so I can get in front of them, right amount of people, don't start with calling 10 people today because you don't have that muscle developed yet. And so as you land on what's your KPI, it's probably going to be a lot bigger than what feels doable today. So say, could I call 2 today? And tie some reward, like go get a coffee, go celebrate if you do that. And then tomorrow you're going to do 3. And then the next day you're going to do 4. But it's like, I think we each get so burnt out when we feel like the delta from where we're at and where we need to go is so big, but it's like breaking it down and allowing ourselves like the gift of like, okay, we're not going to fix this overnight, but we're going to slowly build, and you're building the muscle along the way. So I'd say whatever your KPI is, think of it that way and kind of reverse engineer it like that.
Okay, I knew you were going to be so great as the first one, but I'll add some operational things in here because Dara, because I have ADHD, and I've got in an era right now where I've got 5 DMs, a community, email, Slack, all the things. I think I found this sometimes in nonprofit too, where I always had a million emails. I could sit in email abyss for as long as I needed to, but I've started to structure my calendar where I have more control over what I'm doing. So I think calendar blocking is really important. I get on Asana right away when I get in because I need to see what all my tasks are for the day. Then I go to Slack and then I go to my DMs. So you heard me, I don't do email hardly at all. I've almost given it up, which I know is not healthy, but I've been able to finagle in other different ways and kind of watch it from a high level. So, and I really batch certain things. I hold certain times on my calendar for meeting people in the community, or I block completely my time with my therapist. And that is like red on my calendar and nobody can get me during that time. But I also think if you need to write, like put that on your calendar. If you don't like writing contact reports, hello, that was me when I was a major gift officer. Just batch them, put 2 hours on your calendar, write 12 of them, knock them all out, for the month. And there is just such a good feeling to just feeling like you're in flow. Because I think when you're moving from one thing to another and you're in different programs, it doesn't give you that gift of focus that Julie Ordonez was talking about on one of those habits. You need to optimize with focus. And so any way that you can gather that focus, if you have ways that you can dull your calendar, on your phone, or the amount of dings, I just think like for someone like me that's easily pulled off to something else, having really intentional focus on your calendar is great. And one little hack I would give you is if you don't have Calendly, I would try that out.
Seriously.
Calendly is a way for me to just say, oh, we need to meet for 30 minutes. Here's a link to my calendar, book 30 minutes, but it's already got the stuff that I have on there blocked. So it makes it really efficient and really saves the 10 times going back and forth. Does Wednesday the 4th work? Yes, it does, but not till 10 to 3. Okay, I can do, it just is much easier. And I just think the world's becoming more automated, more tech. And we want to be digital focused and digital forward. And there's just some hacks that will help you do that. So I hope that's helpful. Oh, thanks, Kevin, for the
Evan Kramer with the TED Talk here.
Time blocking.
So good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome question too.
Sweet. I'm not even going to try and tack on that because that was perfect. And for those of you who are wondering, our friend of the show, Kevin Kramer, bringing in not so much a question, but more of just great additional context. I've been using calendar blocking for years. I got my life in gear probably 5 or 6 years ago, and read a book called The One Thing. And I think it escapes the author, but like it focuses on like understanding what those important things are, and then focusing even next step on understanding you and yourself in terms of, am I a better production machine in the morning, afternoon? Do I have those afternoon lulls if,
like
Becky?
I got dolphin energy. I'm like 4 to 11 o'clock at night. It makes no sense. It's my mom time.
Oh my gosh. I stopped caffeine intake at like 11:30 last week, and it's not great for the afternoon. So I'm impressed with myself right now. But I thank you. I understand these things, and I took advantage. So I do all my brain power stuff in the morning. But thank you for that, Kevin.
We have such a good question from Michael Dinsmore. We want to dive into this.
Let me see if this will actually show all the way here. Oh,
it will. Gotta go StreamYard.
All right, I'm going to try and read this. I'm not going to mess it up, I promise. And then I'll tap Jon and Becky into this. Okay, hey guys, I'm curious how you would suggest building and engaging the lower monthly donors when your work products are larger, longer scale, films, cultural reform campaigns, etc., and you're not on an org or in an org like Charity Water has $25, help a family access water. How do you tie the average person to larger story journey when their $25 may seem nominal in the larger budgets you're trying to build for your work?
I'm obsessed with this question. Yeah. It's such a good one. Do you want to take it first, or you want me to take it? I put you on the spot last time. I'll start on this one. Okay, first of all, Michael, thank you for asking for this one, because I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with. And we're going to probably be really disruptive and tell you, when you think about the donor pyramid, we actually think the power in it is inverted. And when you start at the base and you empower that base of small donors, like you're talking about, people who are could become rabid believers of your mission. And we think believers are more powerful than donors. Donors, we're talking about someone who transacts a gift, and it could be something that's very heartfelt, and it likely is, but believers show up in different ways. They show up not just to give the money. They show up with voice. They show up with network. They show up with story. They show up with volunteer hours. They will show up in a way that you need them because they want to be activated into your mission. And I love that you brought up Charity Water. We had Scott Harrison on the podcast. He launched season 7. I think that was
maybe January.
It's really an interesting episode if you want to go listen to it, because it gives you context into Charity Water is not thinking about the nonprofit sector at all. They're thinking about how do we get people into a funnel leading to a bigger belief and something that's much bigger. So the way that I would suggest starting with something, and I will tell you, lower level monthly donors is a beautiful place to start, because if somebody has raised their hand and giving you a signal that they're willing to give you in their monthly budget, that is a really big ask, and that is a really big move for them. And so I think your game and your play here is storytelling in a massive, massive way. And so what I'm talking about is, how do you gather the stories of the collective? What does this mission mean to you? How do you create a culture of storytelling and listening where each of these people who are giving something in are sharing why they're there, why they believe in it, what they've seen as the power in your mission? How did they come in? Who do they credit with bringing them in? Because I do think there's an interesting, I almost see like a family tree where you start to see the limbs get longer and longer and longer because more people are bringing other people in because of their advocacy. And once you have those stories, it becomes the story of the collective, not the story that you are controlling on your own. And I think when you ask that group of people to do more than just give, or when you tell them how your work is empowered through story, through network, through ambassadorship, through signing petitions, through peer-to-peer fundraisers, whatever it is, that's a much richer story. And I also think that if you have not wrapped a brand around that, Jon kind of talked about this before, give them something to believe in. That monthly giving group, they need an identity. They need a mantra. I mean, the Charity Water, you referenced them. They have the spring. The spring raises $24 million a year from people who are just giving monthly. That has become a machine. But those people, if you ask them, very few of them, and we've talked to several of them, are even talking about the amount of the donation. They're just so happy to be a part of the movement. They feel ownership, empowering the movement. And so anything you can do to give them identity, give them swag. If you don't have any money for that, give them a digital something that they could put, maybe wallpaper or something on their Facebook. activate them into their community about why they love your work. And all of a sudden you start to see the ripples come out. And then I would communicate what the collective is doing. It's always nice to say, yes, Jon, thank you for your $25 to here. But you can say, there's something very powerful in saying 342 people stepped forward. They locked arms together and they gave a collective of $28,000. These are modest gifts banded together from people that we don't know who simply believe in the mission. There is power in feeling like you fueled a movement like that. So I'll stop. Jon, do you have anything else?
I mean, how could I add to that? I thought that was really great. It reminds me of the iceberg slide that we started with, because it's really easy to be like, man, I wish we could do that, but that playbook wouldn't work exactly for everybody. We don't have the infrastructure or staff maybe to pull that off. But I love the collective storytelling lens. I think that's where you go with it. You know, I would say the Adventure Project, we always love to rep them. Go sign up for their, literally go just Google them, sign up for their email list, and you'll see just like the cadence of how they talk. You feel like you're part of what they're doing. And then if you join their monthly giving club, their cadence of stewardship and thank you. I don't know if my $25 monthly, I'm a monthly donor, is going to fund this specific person, but I feel like I'm part of something bigger by the way that they like storytell and they talk. And so that's a really good example, just to get on their newsletter list of like how somebody's doing this in real time. And they're threading also founder story and like perspective at the same time. If any of you have your own personal storytelling that you can kind of thread into there, then that's a great example to look at.
And Michael, I dropped in an episode that we did with Vic Harrison, who basically really started to architect the spring. And she talked about how she did it and the mindsets and the work. And Jon's right. We just can't replicate exactly what somebody else is doing. But I do think that that is a really great starting point. So if you want to understand how the spring was built and how that identity played in, the marketing, the branding, the ownership, it's all in that episode too, which is great.
And I realize we're probably over, but we didn't talk about this part of our story, but when we were at Healthcare Philanthropy, we were getting sued by Garth Brooks. Like the second week we're on the job. Okay. We're getting
find us and we'll give you a glass of wine and give you the behind the scenes on that.
You can Google this. You can find this over naming rights of the hospital. But I make the point because we felt like we didn't have public support of our hospital. There's a lot of questions, and we're like, we have to start from within. And that's what really galvanized this belief within us of the values that we see of like a grassroots movement. If you can start with the smallest viable audience and allow them to become believers in what you're doing, like it will scale. I mean, it took 10 years, to realize some of this stuff. But by the time we left, we're closing a $35 million capital campaign from the same organization that was getting drug in the media. It's like, you have to rebuild from who you've got. And man, it sounds like you've got those people, Michael, like, show love to them and give them opportunity to respond, and like, don't be discouraged. Like, you got this.
Oh, totally rooting for Michael.
Yes.
That reminds me of like, I've become really good friends with Chelsea over the Alliance CCA, but her same exact thing. Like, she understands the stickiness of those core supporters and the community that goes with that. And they've tapped into that in exceptional ways, specifically on Facebook and social media. Obviously, that's what we do. But like, just the concept and the idea of how she takes that experience from a traditional peer-to-peer idea, wants to make that community in digital, and then the storytelling aspect goes with it. Just it's so great.
It's mind-boggling, right?
So good.
And then all of a sudden, you don't just become a nonprofit. You become a movement. And this is what we're seeing in the evolution. It's not just about your mission. It's about growing something that's bigger and long-lasting, more long-lasting than all of us. So I'm excited about the future, y'all.
Seriously.
Do y'all have got like 2 minutes left? Because something sparked in my mind.
Yeah,
Jon,
hit us with it.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Jon, I'm going to put you on
yes.
I hope it's graphic design something.
Sweet.
So this post was so good. So good. If you can't see that, Brenna, could you drop that?
This is like awkward.
Oh, I love that you did this. This makes me so happy.
I won't lie to you. Like, we actually ripped one of the main quotes, made our own design with your face, Jon, and put an email yesterday. We loved it.
Oh, how kind.
But my key takeaway here is I am not going to read all this, because y'all go smash the like on this one, because it is great. Outside of the fact that you're saying some, in your opinion, some controversial potential things in that first couple of lines there, It makes sense to me because I see the move and like the changing of tides in fundraising as a whole. But like, it's the risk, the take a risk that's worthwhile of your mission. That's what rung through so much to me. And honestly, like anytime you take to Seth Godin, like you're gonna have some inspirational thoughts. I would have to hope. So this is my shameless plug of that too. If you haven't seen this, he's got a great carousel. Talk about using one piece of content and chopping it up. We call it
syndication, baby. Right here at work.
Why work harder when you can just do so much things so much easier? So this is such a phenomenal post, but it does tie into, to me, some of the themes that we touched on, or well, you touched on today. But that take a risk that's worthwhile to your nonprofit's mission, like that. That's what took me home. I'm gonna take it with that. John, do you have anything more to say or on that one in terms of like for those?
I mean, I'm embarrassed. It's like sitting by my mom's fridge and you hung this on the fridge.
I'm just here to boost your ego, John. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I got to give some backtrack to that because Seth was saying that. And let me give you one tip of like syndication. Whatever content you're creating, there's all the tools now to make this easier. I literally looked at our conversation with Seth in a transcript app that transcribed the entire thing. I scanned it and I was like, oh, that was a really powerful part. I copied and pasted it and split it between Canvas slides. And like, it's like you're saying, reusing content is like a really powerful thing that you can do. So don't recreate the wheel. What do you already have that you could just get more mileage out of? And then secondly, I was threading that conversation with Seth with one that we had in like probably the first teen episodes of We Are for Good with Delari Gandhi. She was with the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation out of Austin. And we were talking about values from her perspective as a granting organization. And one of their values was take the risk your mission deserves, or something like to that extent. And I'm like, that's always just like hung with me. You know, I think that there's, for whatever reason, it feels like we need permission. It's like, no, that's what we exist to do because we haven't solved the problem yet. Like it feels invigorating to me. And I got to give kudos to Seth Godin to getting us in that space. So thanks for lifting it.
Can I lift one good thing is like the last thing on this Seth Godin? Write the thank you note. Don't forget to write the thank you note. I will tell you just behind the scenes, we ended up writing Seth a really heartfelt email just after we interviewed him. And you know what he said? He wrote us back and said, y'all, let's get together. I want to learn about your mission. I want to understand how I can help your mission. I believe in this. And he gave us 30 minutes to talk about our business. Freaking Seth Godin, who's been, you know, like sitting on our shelves.
On our shelves our whole life.
Write that thank you note. Tell people what you meant to them, what their act meant to you. It is a door. It is a cultivation opener. It is the right thing to do. It does so much.
Man, yeah, he's one of the OGs that I first started reading when I was like, hey, maybe I want to be in marketing all these years ago. And like, look where it's gotten me. It's questionable, but he's so fantastic. And that's such a phenomenal thing. So now I feel like I need to write you a novel after this. So have a look out. Give me a couple minutes. And I've gotten really good at just taking other people's content and repurposing for me. So I'm really coming out on top. Okay. I've capitalized on your time way too much already. For those of you still on, thank you so much. Becky, John, I'm going to find a way to bring you back as much as I can for this.
This is fun.
Gosh, this is so fun.
Thanks for your great audience. They were so kind today.
Awesome.
Appreciate
y'all.
y'all.
Have a good one. Make sure to register for the next Nonprofit Growth Lab coming up in a couple of weeks on year-end giving plans and strategies with the year-end dream team. Otherwise, until next time, have a great one, y'all.
Thank you all.
Bye, Claire.
This is so fun.